Perfect. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know how many of you remember, but in general, I really appreciate when there's just one person speaking at a time. If you have any questions, I totally welcome them. And if you have any feedback or dissatisfaction, I really also welcome that after this little lecture/workshop. I will even give you a specific feedback form that you can just fill out if you feel any kind of frustration. However, I do hope that that's not going to be the case. Before we begin, I would really encourage you to fork/clone this repo. I sent it in a Slack message. That will be absolutely helpful for you to move forward. So now, who of you has ever used any CSS? Okay, perfect. Who feels like, oh yeah, CSS, it's easy?
Are you sending me
Kind of.
Don't be afraid.
Okay, cool.
Don't be my son.
Okay, perfect. So you see, when I realized that we only have 90 minutes to cover everything, that's kind of challenging. So I was thinking about what would be a good MVP for this time. So I decided to equip you guys with a lot of vocabulary and with a lot of ideas, so that when you actually come to use CSS, even if you don't remember everything, you will be able to check how it was done in this lecture, right? So while we'll be covering a lot, you are not expected at all to know everything or even know everything after this lecture. This lecture is more geared towards planting a lot of seeds of inspiration in your creative minds, so that later you can Google and just go wild. Okay, so before we begin, someone shout your favorite website that is appropriate to be showcased on a screen. Go ahead, Nick.
I think it's colormine.io.
Okay, cool. So now what I would encourage you to do also on your browsers, go into Chrome Developer Tools, open. So you do it. How do you do that? Does anyone know? Okay, go. Mm-hmm.
So you can go to options,
Yes.
and you would have more tools, and more tools would have developer tools.
Where are the options?
The three dot. Chrome would have.
Oh yeah, here.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
And
Or you can also open it through pressing Option, Command, and I. Or if you don't like the I letter, you can just press Option, Command, and J. Okay. So now in the README, you can just copy this snippet and just paste it in the console and enter. Look what happens. This is the world without CSS. And this is why we need CSS, right? So basically, this is the internet that maybe reminds you of childhood, but unfortunately, it would be a little bit disappointing to, have this in your portfolio unless this is a conscious aesthetic choice, which I absolutely condone. But anyway, for many folks, this wouldn't be a go-to aesthetics, and because of that, it is cool to know what CSS can do. And now, I personally like to go step by step when I'm learning anything, and I get easily overwhelmed. So I would encourage you to first explore CSS on your own. But how are you gonna do that? Well, here's how. So you've already cloned the repo, right? So now you're gonna open the Visual Studio with the repo. And then just copy, right-click on the index.html. So go to the quiz folder, and then copy the path of index.html, and just simply paste it into your browser. Cool?
Can you do that again?
Absolutely. And this is super helpful. It's going to be so helpful for you in the upcoming mod, especially. So you're in the repo. You have 2 folders, exercise and quiz, and a file README. So you click on the quiz. You right-click on the index.html. You copy the path, and then just paste it into the browser. Awesome. So I prepared a little quiz for you. Now, what I would like you to do is, in pairs, just read each question. First, read it. Second, try to guess which answer it's gonna be, and hover over the answers. It will be clear for you which answer is right because of the colors. So, green answer is the right answer. Red answer is the wrong answer. However, that's not all, because as this super helpful little cloud tells you, you can also use keyboard navigation. So if you click tab, you will have an explanation. So read the question, try to guess the answer, check whether your guess is correct, and then read an explanation. And do that with your partner. You have 8 minutes.
I think I know your arranging stuff.
So this is what we're adding. This is the margin. This
area outside this blue is the margin, and then the area between
basically like colored area.
Space between the red line and the X. That's the space between the red line and
See, I think
And Flexbox is a single column row.
So I think for Flexbox, we need to adjust things that way.
Or ID or are they also I think it's like IDs, class,
You're gonna have like 10 jobs.
He's doing the CSS. He's not doing basic.
So that just this is what it is. This is either one of those.
Yeah, so your tag is your all your
One element essentially change. March. Yeah, that's a common problem. Auto is Google here is user visits the website. Sure, simple CSS. Add What does this mean? Sort of I was wondering how it was saying how you can't adjust it top to bottom, so I'm wondering how do you do So it's not margins? Margins are left and There are three selections. Inline CSS, starting with the tag, so basically you write your HTML with CSS tag to it.
You have last 2 minutes.
Below it, your first, so like in the very title, like head, the CSS could change the entire body, or you can get a CSS main file, yes, style sheet. Yeah, that's what most people So basically it'll layer on top of each other. Anything below that increases the onto our life. So it's just so we use Racine, we use RGBA, and we use change the background. This is black. Oh, this is change
It's pretty sure. It's a simple
Last 30
How do you
seconds.
advance keyboard navigation experience? Focus
So that's why I like the timer, because I don't have to shout. Everyone just jolts. Great. So, how was it?
Great.
Okay. Well, if you know that the goal of the exercise was not for you to remember everything, but just to get more exposed to what we're going to be talking about, I guess that maybe I just looked at Nick, who was just yawning. So I'm like, okay, that's going great. No, don't worry. Okay, cool. So I hope that we all preserve the excitement until the end. Cool. So I would suggest that we just go through the questions and also check how it's done. And I welcome questions. However, I will just manage your expectations from the beginning, and I will tell you that most probably for some questions I won't be able to answer because we only have 90 minutes. Cool. So what does the CSS stand for?
Cascading style sheets.
Cascading style sheets. Great. And that means that basically it is a cascade. It is really important for you to remember that it's a cascade. That means that like in simplest terms, that all the elements are inheriting the properties from somewhere, right? So if you're trying to change something and for some reason your CSS is not reacting at all, you know, maybe you want to check what's the style of the parent element, you know, or whether how you wrote your CSS, whether there is any point in your application that overrides what you're thinking you're working on. So this is just something for you to treasure forever in your hearts, because you will be struggling with that even if you're using libraries or some frameworks. Most probably this wonderful feature of CSS will come and get and find you sooner or later. Cool. Okay, so what is the box model? Anyone? Go ahead, Nick.
So, simple terms is the answer in
Okay.
So basically, it's this framework for how content is rendered on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your content in the center, and then you have padding as like a way of putting space between that and the border and
Mm-hmm.
edge of your container element. And then margin is the space that separates that from other elements.
Exactly. So, if you guys want to open your Chrome developer tools, now, if you don't remember how, don't worry, I got you. I wrote here, Command Option I. So, press those three buttons. Okay. Huh? Okay. Cool. If you want to know what a box model is, this is a box model. Basically, everything just as Nick said, everything on your page comes in a box, with a box, right? So let's say if you want to inspect any given element, let's say this answer. Wait. Okay. Well, in theory, maybe this. I can't grab it because of the animations. But normally, oh no, I'm actually grabbing it, sorry. So how I know that it's selected, because you see that here, I will just make it bigger as well. Okay, so you see that this element is highlighted. So because of that, I'm gonna be working on this specific element. Now, what actually Google Developer Tools are giving you for free is this amazing opportunity to work on your CSS right here. So first of all, the box model. Just as Nick said, everything comes with a box. So there's the margin. Margins are invisible. So while you won't be able to, they're transparent. So while you won't be able to see them, they can really influence how your page is being rendered. Then there is the border, right? So you can see that it highlights when I hover over the border. You can see that it highlights here. Oops. Then you have the padding. And do you know what the padding is? How would you explain what the padding is? Go ahead.
Padding is like the space something is away from, like one thing on your page is from another.
So that would be the almost, but to be more specific, the distance between one element to another element, that would be margin, right? And padding is the distance between border and the content. So if you want some element to be, to not touch the border but just be more centered, you would use padding, right? And then you have the content. So that would be the same for the answer. You see the margin is not that big, but it's enough because it separates it from another answer. Then you have the border, then you have the padding, and then you have the content. Okay, but this is not the coolest feature of Google Chrome Developer Tools. We can actually just play with it. We can make the width, 1,000 pixels. Well, in this case, it's not gonna really react because exactly CSS is a cascade, so it inherits values, right? But in general, let's say we can also add. Let's change the border color. You see? It reacts. We can even go a step further and make them all dotted and make them all 10. So this is wonderful, right? While this isn't really too pleasing, it is an aesthetic choice. So, okay. I maybe didn't love it too much, so it's just enough to refresh your page. So this is cool because it re-renders as you click, so you don't have to really change anything on your style sheet. You can just play on your Google DevTools and then insert the changes in your style sheet. Is that clear? Awesome. Okay, so there are lots of different opinions in the developer world about how the text and the different components should be organized on your page. So I'm a person who holds opinions very strongly, very strong opinions very loosely. So I switch quite often between what's better, Flexbox or Grid. However, right now, I think I became finally mature enough to actually use both. So if you see in my style sheet, we'll explore that in a second, you'll see that I'm actually using Grid for this whole container, question container, but then Flexbox for this one row. So you don't have to choose. But just to reiterate what Flexbox and Grid are, those are ways to organize your components, the layout of your page, right? So in order to have more control over how wide something is or how much space it takes, you can follow those two design, I would say, principles. We won't have too much time to go in detail into them. However, I would really recommend that you have a good read about them. If you see, yeah, so I suspend my tabs because, you know, I tend to have like 50 open. But if you ever want to get really good at Flexbox or Grid, there are those two games that, you know, you can just play. You can learn Flexbox by just inserting good code and moving the frog from point A to point B. This is for Flexbox, and then you also have for Garden, right? So if you're waiting impatiently for some lecture, this is your go-to, way of spending time. So from this question, I just want you to know that something like this exists, and it is there to help you. But you don't have to remember this at all for a few reasons, one of which, and the others I will cover in a second. But one of the reasons would be that if you go to cheat sheets, you will see that there is this wonderful resource that is basically giving you all the templates that you will ever need when it comes to Grid. I'm sure that such a resource also exists for Flexbox, so don't worry. Basically, if you go here, you will see that not only you get the HTML, but also CSS. So you can just figure out how they did it and just, you know, play with it on your own. Cool. Do you have any questions by now? Okay, Mark.
What was it called again? Froggy CSS?
So if you go to my README, you would see practice. This is Grid and Flexbox. The one with the frog was Flexbox. If you have a particular like interest in frogs, maybe Flexbox would become easier for you. I don't know. Okay, I literally once lived with a roommate who really loved hamsters. Great. Okay, so yeah. So what is better, Flexbox or Grid? You don't have to choose. You know, first of all, it depends what for you need it, and second, sometimes, you know, you may actually integrate both. So maybe approach them with open heart and open mind. Okay, now selectors. Okay, so this is really serious. If you're already like half sleeping, this is for you. This is the moment for you to wake up, because selectors. Without the selectors, there is no CSS, real game, right? You also need the selectors, even if you're like, oh, I don't care about CSS, you will need selectors for JavaScript. So this is how it's relevant for you. And this is the moment when we actually should look into the code. So you can either look on the screen, or you can look in your own laptop. Cool. So, okay, so what are the selectors that I'm using here? Just some examples. Just shout.
Oh, all.
Okay, all?
Yeah.
You mean this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there another name for that, by the way?
There's, sorry?
Is there like a more proper name for that?
I just call it asterisk, but I don't know. Ian, is there a better way to call an asterisk? Star selector? Yeah. Okay, what else? What else would be a selector here? Tag names. And also? Huh? Okay, I can't hear you, so I'm sure that your colleagues here can't hear you either. Go ahead. IDs. And which one would be an ID? So this one. Cool. And this one, what would it be? A class. Cool. So this is for you. This is super important for you to remember that if we have an ID on your HTML, like for example here, you will use a hash, right? A hashtag to mark that you are trying to identify an ID, right? And if you're trying to select a class, then you would use a dot. So if you really look into this file, this is really how CSS is written, right? It's super simple syntax. The syntax is super simple, however, the options are limitless, and that's how it gets you So you have the name of the selector, then you have the curly brackets, and then at the end of each line you will have a semicolon. If you forget about the semicolon, it will error out, right? And however, sometimes you can just chain the selectors. So like for example here, what would that mean?
Tag is class, all A tags with the class of demo.
Exactly, all A tags with a class of demo. Okay, and then you have this funny thing. Let's do it here. Okay, so what would this mean? Maybe someone else. Go ahead.
So if you go to the class or idea, the question.
This is class.
So question class, and if you use your mouse, hover over the question, and then it will turn red.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And cool. And then, okay, and then what would this be? Okay, so basically when an element is in focus. So how can an element be in focus? For example, the keyboard, or sometimes if you click on it, it can also get in focus, you know? Like, wait, yeah, this element cannot, but in some cases also you can select the element through just clicking on it. And now, why would we care about focus? Go ahead, Mark.
We're working with the DOM. We're using JavaScript, which is like things like mouse press, etc. We want the CSS to correspond to that.
Yeah, for example, in some cases. More importantly, focus is an accessibility feature. So you really want to enable people who have different limitations and different experiences of the web to follow easily what's happening. So now, if you add the value of the focus, this is exactly what's happening. You see? Like, you can follow easily where you actually are. And now, in order to enable, so what's actually happening here? When I click tab, let's do this. Okay, so you will be surprised to learn that actually the explanations, they don't disappear and appear. They are there all the time. However, look at this. They have a ridiculous top margin, meaning that if they are not in focus, they actually live somewhere far, far, far away. So only when I'm clicking on the focus, the top margin changes to 2%. By the way, the 2%, is it what is it a percentage of? The box, you see? That's correct. So it will always take the 2% of the box, right? I'm using a few different ways of measuring the height and the width. So I'm just gonna stop on it for a second. What would this be? Do you guys know? Okay, so go ahead.
Is it view height?
It's viewport height, and this is viewport width. Now, what is a viewport? Viewport would be your window. So what that means is if I am going to change the size of the window, it will scale, right? Now, funny thing happens if you replace those two, because it will still work, right? So let's do that. So let's say I will just insert some ridiculous number. So you see, I'm changing the height of the answer to 100%, I think, of viewport width. See, it's still working, but it's surely the width of, it is taking the 100 points of the width and not of the height, right? So it will still work. However, if you are trying to really be very precise with the width and height, it is really cool to remember that if you're trying to measure the height, maybe you should use the WH, right? So this is just like one of the more advanced features, but I think that it's good to know about it. Cool. So coming back to the explanation, when I get this element into focus, it changes its margin top, right? But actually what can happen, what you can do, you can also change, for example, its color, you can change its, you can just do whatever you want. You can insert some animation, you can just be as creative as you want. Now, I personally, because you can achieve the same in a few different ways, or seemingly the same. What would happen if instead of changing the margin, let's just comment this out. Instead of that, I would try to make it appear and disappear, right? So to change opacity. Okay, what would be, how do I first change the opacity? What would be, how do I make the div transparent?
You want it to be transparent, the opacity is 0.
0. And when we come on in focus, maybe we should do, what do you say? Maybe 0.9 or even 1. Look at that. So it is not visible, but I mean, it kind of messes up my CSS, right? So this is not what I really love, and I opted for the option that is also recommended by accessibility, directories principles. Cool. Okay, what would this be? What would that mean? Mm-hmm.
2 classes, both of the classes.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So this would, instead of repeating my CSS over and over and over, I can just, and list here the classes that I want this specific feature to apply to. And there is also an opposite of that, which is not. You can say all the A tags that are hovered over, but not the ones in a class of demo. Cool? Okay, so let's get back to the beginning. So what does this mean? The asterisk or the star? All. Yes, it means it's, whatever you write here is gonna apply to the whole app, right? So if we do, let's say background color, let's just take this one. Great. We see that in some places it was overridden, right? Or actually, most probably these are the empty spaces. So you don't want to, maybe not necessarily you want to do that. Maybe you want to keep in the all tag only the stuff that is really necessary for the whole app to obey. It's just easier later to debug. I also wanted to show you this little thing. Please don't judge me. This is just for showing you the gradients and not really my stylistic choice. So you can play with gradients. Okay. Okay. What is happening here? What the hell? Who can explain this? Huh?
Is that a footer?
No, it's not a. Okay. Let's actually. Thank you for your guess. Let's see whether I have something like a footer. So it would be at the end, right? No. We can also actually inspect it with our Google developer tools that now you will always remember forever how to switch them on. Command Option I. If you hover over that, you will see that. Sorry, that was a. Okay, so if you hover over that, you will see that this is a.demo, meaning most probably it's a tag with a class of demo, like for example, this one. So now, why is it actually changing its color? Any ideas? Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's a separate div, it might also be doing the background, but it's
kind of. Actually, this is the power of the invisible padding, right? So if you just go down, down, down. Right. This is the power of the invisible transparent padding. So sometimes it will get you because the gradients basically just scale to whatever box you have. So the repetition can only happen if there's something that is really unexpected. Okay, let's explore other gradients. Yay! So I just included it here as a commented out code, just so you know that this is possible. So for example, these gradients, they do have the repetition, but it is already, as you see, it is repeating linear gradient.
Can you put like any picture on it?
Picture? No, those are gradients. But you can also just include background picture. This is like not into the gradients, but as background you can have a picture. So this is something you can also just Google, right? But it's actually, it's a very good question and something that many people use. And if you have, I will just share with you one link with amazing pictures in high quality. Okay, cool guys. So you already know that there are different gradients and that you can play with them. Like for example, if you look at this syntax, whenever this basically just shows you the direction into which the gradient will be going, and then you just change the colors. So have fun with this because it's there for you. Cool. Maybe one of the super important things to remember is that there are 3 ways to connect your CSS to your HTML, right? What will they be? Any ideas? Go ahead.
First is inline.
Okay.
HTML.
Mm-hmm. So for example, if I wanted to add some CSS to anywhere, let's say here, I would just do style, and then just write whatever style I want, right? Okay, what would be the next one? Mm-hmm. In the header. And I'm doing it here. Now, please don't be confused. This is actually just one tag, right? For readability, I just split it into 3 lines. But this is the culprit, right? Responsible for connecting our style sheet to this file. Cool. And then there's also a 3rd way, which is external CSS file. So basically, you can import your style sheets. Now, why would you want to do that? Because maybe you don't really care about CSS, and that's fine, because not everyone has to feel very passionate about CSS. If you feel like, maybe this is not how you want to spend your life, perhaps you want to explore, one of the libraries or frameworks that already help you style your website, right? So I will include the links. So basically, there are a few different options for you. If you don't care that much about styling your website on your own, you can just basically use what's already there. You can use Bootstrap. You can use, which is a very popular framework. It's not the easiest one to begin with, but it absolutely, once you learn it, I think that it's really fun. There is, for example, Materialize, that is the official framework by Google. And so if you want your page to look kind of familiar, you can use this framework. So what does that mean, using a framework? So you can either import a style sheet, and then you will already have, background, you already have a font, you already have all those things scattered for you. Or you can just import a given element, right? Like, for example, a button, or you get the code, and you can already, for example, import badges in the navbar, or you can actually, some of them even allow you to import the whole navbar. So this is really your personal preference. Many students use the already available library or framework, and that just makes their life easier.
What's the difference between like SAS and CSS? Like I seen the other things with using SAS. What's
Yeah.
SAS on it?
So SAS is a pre-compiler, pre-processor. Is that correct? I'm checking with the staffs. Yeah, go ahead. Oh yeah. Basically, it is. I tried to give you an analogy to TypeScript and JavaScript, but that's not the mode yet. Basically, it is SAS is. It is. I would say it is a framework that makes it easier for you to organize your CSS. However, if you want to, your choice is to go for styling your website on your own, I would start with CSS for sure, right? And then just move to SAS because it's just much easier. Later to first learn the basics, just like you did with Ruby and Rails. It's better to start with CSS and then go into SAS. Cool. Okay. Okay, this is something that is just like fun thing to know. As you see, this little cloud, it is sometimes behind and sometimes, it's always behind. And, it's just nothing to really explain much. It is that it's only that you can create layers on your page, and you create it with z-index. So if you want something to be very much on top, you would choose some very, very much higher integer, right? Like, for example, 100. I think that for the cloud, I use maybe z-index minus. Let's see. Oh yeah, -5, so that it will always be behind. By the way, be friends to your future self and really name your classes and IDs and variables right. Because if you ever have to debug your CSS and you called everything like container 2, good luck. You will have the time of your life. I learned it the hard way. Cool, opacity, just basically, you just change the opacity. If you want something to not be transparent, it's 1 that you can think about. It's like 100%. And if you want low opacity, it would be 0 point something, right? Okay, and if you want, there are lots of fun things about CSS. Like, for example, if you see this helpful cloud, it's really just stuck to this one place on your screen, and it doesn't move, right? All the other elements are moving. This one doesn't, and it's super simple. If you want to play with that, that would be position. So let's say if you have a footer that you want to be stuck to just one point, you would use position, right? There are different features of position. Different values of position. It can be, for example, static, sticky. I would just invite you to explore that because it's fun. By the way, if you're using Bootstrap or if you're using like any of the frameworks, you still can introduce your own CSS, right? And you can still style a little bit the elements that you're importing. So, while this is not going to be the most pleasurable experience of your life, you can do that, just so you know. There was a question.
Do you know the difference between position, absolute, and relative?
Yeah.
I think that's what is the main hard point for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would say that's actually a very good blog post subject. And I made the commitment to myself to not go into details, just like give everyone the gift of, hey, there is something like position. If you're interested, explore that. And because I don't want to overwhelm people who are just like, just trying to follow. But we can also talk about that later on. But I would also super recommend writing a blog post about that because that will be helpful for everyone. And, it's just also cool to know that when you're drawing a border, you can just have a few different properties. And I would just invite you to read the explanation and also And yeah, and also just play with it, right? So I remember that. By the way, 1 second. Yeah, as you see, like for example, here I am only using 3 properties. So that would be the width, the thickness of the border, then the color, and what type it is. I know that there are some funky types, like, well, I don't remember right now. Yeah, groove. That was, yeah, I thought it's groovy, but it didn't sound right to me. Yeah, so, well, you won't see it, but yeah, you won't see it in this case. But maybe if we, let's see. So basically what Groove does, it gives you like a 3D, maybe 3D kind of, yeah, you see? Like 3D effect, which is really 90s. So if you want that, why not? You know, be fun, have fun, because you can. And you can also just include the radius, right, if you want. I don't know, let's do 100%. Brace yourself. No one said it's gonna be very beautiful. Right, so you can have fun like that all you want. Okay, there is one more thing that I really wanted to show you. Oh yeah, animations. So, well, I don't know how bedazzled you are by my animations here, but you should be. I take great pride in them. But you know, so okay, so there are, if you want to learn how to make animations, be my guest. This is how you include animations. Do you know why so this is the same animation, right? So we kind of repeat the same code, but we don't. So who knows what's the difference between those two things? Why do we need to include WebKit animation and animation? Yuki?
I think, I don't remember exactly, but there's something to do with the browser, old version, you know, old computer. I don't know, something to do with that.
You know, here in the US, oftentimes people forget that in other places of the world, not everyone uses Mac, and not everyone is using, you know, Google Chrome or Mozilla. So if you really want to have an awesome experience, just test your app on, you know, Internet Explorer, and preferably on some Windows. Yeah, have fun. So anyway, so that's why we need, in order to have a fallback option. So in here, basically what I am doing here, I am just invoking the animation. The animation itself is declared way below, right? So here, this is how you declare the animation. Now this looks scary, and we're not going to be going over that. I would encourage you to play with it, but at the same time, you don't have to, because guess what? Someone already took care of you. You have animation generator here, and another animation generator. So if you go here, okay, this one is not really fast, but like if you go here, you can just choose an animation that you like, and you can have fun with it. Yeah? So...
Wait, do you need to install Gem or something?
No. It's just basic feature of CSS and CSS or HTML, I think CSS. If you explore these cheat sheets, you would see that, you know, you have basic CSS generator, you have a button generator so that you don't have to style your buttons. You know, it's all there. You can have, oh, wait, this is something that I would really implement, this kind of stylistic. Okay, anyway, you know, just explore the cheat sheets. You have gradient generator. Basically, it's all there, and I'm sure that if you have very specific need, you know, you want to make a custom cursor, yeah, I'm sure that there's a generator for that as well. So just use your favorite tool, Google, and just go wild. Now, you may think, oh my God, this all is so simple. If you are still unfazed, okay, let me show you this. If you're like, I was doing that when I was 10. Look at this. Okay. Believe it or not, it's all made with CSS. Every single thing is made with CSS. You don't have to believe it. You can just go to the link, then clone this repo, and then play with it on your own. But now, if you're not really impressed, oh, you can't do that. Anyway, you can just really see that each and every little hair, oh yeah, it's a separate CSS element. Cool. So now you have something to aspire to. There is, yeah, because I increased it's not responsive, but yeah. If you want to do some art, which actually in Mod 5, when I was really tired and frustrated and bored and all that, I would be really exploring either CodePen or pages like this one, and just look how all this is done with CSS and a single div. So you can just see what people are doing and read a lot of code. There's something that actually I was never really impressed by, but my cohorts were like, whoa! So, okay. Let me show you this. Okay, there was too much clicking, even for me. No. That's why. Okay, so there's this website that basically shows you how the same website can be influenced by just different design. So it's all the same, just like the CSS is different. So if you want to know the importance of good CSS, just explore the projects in there. I will fix the link just in like 20 minutes. I also, because I personally care very deeply about accessibility, I think that internet should be accessible. You can also read more about accessibility, how to make your CSS accessible. Here, I included some reading materials. Something that Nick mentioned. So there's this page. This is basically a palette page, right? It helps you, if you're not like a pro when it comes to colors, you can just generate colors and then you can play with them. Cool. So this is one of the helpful tools for you to choose the color scheme. There's another one, I think it's this, that has an added feature. If you go to colors, wow, what a name, you can choose how people with different visual impairments, how they won't see the same color scheme. Now, this is just like a side remark. It's really cool when you're trying to make your page accessible, and yet as the default value you use the word normal. So allow me to be a little bit snarky here. But anyway, it's cool. There's another thing that I personally love so much. So this is a contrast checker. If you want your page to be accessible, you want to make sure that the contrast between different colors that you are using is the right one. I don't want to go into detail right now, but here you can just check how this particular colors, whether they are visible or not, right? And whether the contrast is right. And I think that is cool because, you can basically already choose from the very beginning the contrast that will not exclude anyone. Cool. Do you guys have any question? Or what questions do you have? Except for what is life? Yeah, go ahead.
What's the difference between a paragraph and span?
Okay. Does anyone know what's the difference? Go ahead.
Between paragraph and span?
Mm-hmm.
So paragraph is just pretty much for rendering text. Span is actually like kind of opposing for a div, whereas div is a container where its contents kind of go in new lines. Span, you can put multiple elements, and it's supposed to be in the same line, in the same horizontal line.
Mm-hmm. So if you see here, basically, so it is like div and, so the real question would be, what is the difference between div and span? So span is another way of marking some element, but the trick is that span doesn't come with default values. Span is just like, hey, there's a foreign element here, but I don't want it to be, I don't know, in a different line or a different container. So for example, I did it with here when you see in the explanation. There are different ways to do that, but you see that explanation is boldened. And I did it only with span, right? But that's a very good question. And I will include it for my next lecture when I'm running this. Cool. Okay, so now I know that we have a little bit of time left, and I'm super happy about that because I actually wanted to invite you for a tiny competition. Because I am a very competitive person. And so, well, you know, if you are like, okay, I don't care, but I can tell you that there's a teeny tiny reward. So if you're like, oh, I don't care about that, I just want to, I don't know, just, you know, chill, that's cool. You're an adult, you're making decisions for yourself. However, I created a separate folder that's called exercise. So now, what you want to do? Well, there are a few different things that you want to do. First, open README, because that's where you always should start. You know, remember that for all the code challenges and any kind of, you know, whenever you do anything, just start with README. Cool. And then after you read the README, you want to open OMG Trouble, because I like drama, in your browser. Oh, this is not really pretty. Great. And there's also associated style sheet. So now you have, let's say 10 minutes. And you can work in pairs, or you can work alone, or you can chill if you don't want to do anything for 10 minutes. So it should be really simple. The person who locates and solves all the bugs first wins. Or if 10 minutes pass and no one has located and solved all the bugs, then the person pair or I don't know, three person pair will the group that has the most bugs solved will win. Okay, are you feeling competitive? Yay! Okay, so now because I don't like to shout, I am starting the timer for 10 minutes. Okay, time start. If something is unclear, you can reach out.
I can't.
uncomment about the style sheet.
Oh, really? That's
I mean, keep playing around with it. You'll figure something. Use it.
I love the competitive spirit here. This is my element.
I misunderstand what you said, but when I first like how long I got
So for some reason,
The second one oh my god.
I was like, just programmatic shit.
No, you also don't have to go from 1 to 2 to 3 in order. You can just pick and choose whatever you want to fix.
Should be centered.
I cannot have two ideas similar, right? Ideas are one, right? So I can't have two IDs. Same IDs with the.
This is the instinct of but you don't have to change
It's like a position, it's kind of like a position relative to its container, and then position.
Oh, I don't know what you're saying. It's just yeah, like 2 years old, came down to CSS.
How are you doing? Would you like 5 minutes more? 2 minutes more?
10 minutes.
Okay, you're getting 5 minutes from me. Yay.
Oh, we made it. Look, we can move. So there's 200.
This is the page we're working on, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is bad.
You have to upload it again?
No. So go to the oh my god problem.
Yeah.
Right click on it. Yeah. Oh my god trouble. Right click on it. Copy that.
Oh, I thought it was supposed to be my commission. I'm taking this
Why isn't it doing what I'm telling it to do?
So the story of CSS. Yeah, story of CSS.
It says if I do float left, it should be moving left, right?
Well, it depends.
It's not. It's in the shifted at all.
Well, float also is.
That means
Depends, but float can be also dependent on how you change the order of the elements on the page. So maybe float is more, maybe you want to try or you can also check how, I did it in the margin left. While each element is styled, not each, but some elements are styled differently in this version of the page, I am basically still using the same properties, right? So if you think, wow, why is this thing not going to the left? Maybe you want to check how I did it in the other page. Oh, don't worry, that's not the timer. I don't know what that is.